Hi, my name's Lindy Cowling and welcome to my channel. My website is www.lindycowling.co.uk. My email is info@lindycowling.co.uk, and the way to contact me for sessions would be via that email, please. The title of the short video today is Soulmates Redefined. Soulmates Redefined. So as regular viewers and subscribers to this channel will know, all information shared by me as the channel is experiential, which means I've experienced it personally and or professionally, having worked in the arena of energy, shall we say, for 18 years now. Soulmates Redefined has been something that was playing around in my mind earlier today. And as you know, if you're a regular viewer to this channel, I like using real life examples, but I also like using movies that I've seen or pieces of music, or sometimes I even reference other people's work as a way of illustrating and backing up what I'm saying. So in the terms of soulmates, that has been a way of referencing a closeness or a closeness in relationship, or an experience in the relationship paradigm, the old relationship paradigm, for as long as I can remember. I mean, as long as I can remember, right back into childhood. People would be referred to as soulmates, and it would be the big Romeo and Juliet scenario, or the Wuthering Heights, almost like tragic love scenario. And that point of it is an important point to make, actually, because my personal experience, that it would be in my personal life so far, but also in my professional life so far, of the old meaning of soulmates is very much on that trajectory of almost like very dramatic, sometimes very tragic, very powerful connection in terms of a relationship scenario. And you will hear other people reference it as when someone's your soulmate, you're inseparable and there's no polarization or no triggering or nothing like that. I would say, using the old paradigm reference, the old way of referring to soulmates, yes, that is possible, but I would say that that's quite unusual. And when it is possible, in the cases that it's possible where there is a soulmate connection, where there is no triggering, no polarization left, is because those things have already been resolved in other timelines, alternate realities, parallel timelines, parallel realities, or another word for it, in other lives. It's already been resolved. Or another word for it, there's no more karmic payoff needed. And so there's no polarization left. So the reference in the old relationship paradigm of soulmates, in that sense, when a couple are very harmoniously entwined and there's no polarization, that would be accurate then. How often have I seen that, personally or professionally? Maybe only about 10%, so a small percentage actually. What is more common is either soulmates in the relationship format that is very polarized, that is learning and growing and expansion of consciousness and the soul through relationship, that can be quite entangled, quite troublesome, a lot of referencing and playing back to other timelines or other lives or other realities affecting it. And that is very commonplace, and that almost like the Romeo and Juliet scenario, very commonplace there, and a lot of pushing and pulling and discomfort there. That is actually more commonplace in the old paradigm word for soulmates. When I say word for soulmates, I'm not just saying it as a word, I'm saying it as someone who reads the energy. So I'm defining it from an energy perspective, and that one is definitely more common and most common. Of course, you can have soulmates that you're not in a romantic relationship with, and they might be in a kind of friendship form or on the parameters of your life in another way, and therefore might not seem so polarized because they're on the parameters of your life. Or in a different format, maybe the pressure's off a bit more because the romance is not there. So I'm redefining the word for soulmate, because what tends to happen is, in popular speak, so to speak, anyone that's in a relationship with someone that's long-term or harmonious seems to be referred to as a soulmate. And in that sense, it's just a word. It's actually incorrect in the sense of the energy, which is why I'm explaining it, defining it like I am now. As you know, it's an experiential channel, like I've said before, and so I'm talking professionally, having worked in energy arena for 18 years now, and professionally qualified and registered in doing so. But everything I talk about and reference was also through personal experience, myself personally. So with me, the soul connection ones, where there has been other timeline history or other life history, have all been very dramatic and hugely dramatic, actually, all of them. And none of them resulted in a good ending, if you know what I mean. Very dramatic, starting from the age of 17, very dramatic, and were more like along that trajectory of polarization, playing out a particular scenario. I could use the word karma, I don't use that very often, that kind of play out. Very powerful, very wonderful, but also extremely painful and challenging, and things to be resolved. That would be, I experienced that, so at 17 until 20. Then again, later on in my 30s, again, even a catalyst on a soul side of it was another kind of a connection again, which was all about expansion and expansion of consciousness. And interestingly, the long-term, absolutely stable, non-polarized connection I have experienced in my life was not a soulmate and was not connected as soul family, but actually someone very different who I was married to for 27 years with hardly a cross word between us. No polarization, in fact, whatsoever. No drama. And you could ask, well, why aren't you still married to them yet then? And that would be a result of a powerful soul connection that was resulting in a heart awakening consciousness for me. And then just 2 years, nearly 3 years after that, bang, straight into the twin flame union. So that pretty much nailed my marriage. Going through that. On a personal note, I'm great friends with my former husband, my ex-husband. We are still great friends. And there is still that love for one another, you know, whether it's like a family love or a sister and brotherly love. But that was not and is not a polarized connection. So the point I'm making here is the actual stable, calm, non-polarized connection was not a soulmate, and I would never refer to my ex-husband as a soulmate. And, you know, yes, I will always love him, and there will always be that stability there. And we have 2 sons between us, so you always have that, you know, obviously between you as well. So I'm using that as an illustration through personal experience that many people would say, well, if you're with someone 27 years, that was your soulmate. No, you know, and I've even said that to my ex-husband, you know, we're not connected in soul, but it just worked. And there are many people that are in marriages, partnerships, boyfriend, girlfriend, that refer to them each other as soulmates because they've been together for ages and they get on well, and they're not soulmates at all. And if I did a reading for them, an energy reading for them, I would be able to clarify that in somewhere between 3 and 10 minutes, because there is a particular signature and frequency and sound to the soul which I can hear, which gives me the input and the information on that. Does it take away from someone that's been in a long-term partnership with someone? They may call it soulmates, but does it take away from their connection or their relationship? Of course it doesn't. This is it's just how people define it, and this is a video on defining it, because really soulmates is a word that is used pretty blasé, a bit like, you know, any word that's used over and over again. Really, it doesn't really in many contexts have much meaning behind it. People use it to reference people that have a powerful interaction with it, one another, or a long-term interaction with one another, or a dramatic connection with one another. And of course it can be any of these things, but many times it's used, let's say, incorrectly. You do get soulmates that, like I say, aren't that polarized and are able to stay in each other's lives long term. Mostly I've seen that personally and professionally when those are on the perimeters of the life, like in a friendship capacity or in a capacity where they can support one another and they're not up close and personal. There are exceptions to that, but I have to say, I have to speak professionally and personally here. That's an experiential channel, and all the other examples I've seen and lived through personally have all been very polarized, especially in the earlier years. Of course, this varies depending on one's level of expansion into the heart and where they're at in their process. So in other words, at this point in my process, I would not, how it would work for me now is I would connect with someone that either was not my soul family or soul group, or was, but as I am far less polarized than I was now, and much more balanced and becoming fully conscious, they would match that. So in other words, I would meet what I call an ascensionary soulmate, which I've explained on other videos on my channel, which is someone that is a soulmate in a non-polarized form, that's all about expanding and becoming fully conscious, and is not for the purposes of karma or developing from that point of view. It depends on where one gets to their consciousness. So at my point in my evolution at the moment, it would be an ascensionary soulmate, or it wouldn't be a soulmate at all, or it'd be a matching aspect of consciousness or a great heart connection. You will get to a point, most likely in your evolution, where it really doesn't matter what label you put on someone you fall in love with, or have a great connection with, or have a great life with, or a great marriage with, or a great relationship with. It won't really kind of matter. The reason I'm bringing this video out is because obviously a great chunk of the work I do is defining energy connections, not just defining energy in the sense of everyday life, which I can do as well, but defining the energy connections. And of course, many people that, like I say, refer to them as themselves as one thing aren't that thing at all. I mean, that would be across the board, including twin flames, all categories. People sometimes put a name on these things because they have a belief system that aligns with that, or sometimes they put a name on it because they decide to progress forward into a financial business based on the back of that. Sometimes it's the opposite to that, and they just have a very deep knowing of what they are or their connection is. But it's a mixture of kind of all of those things, really. A great example, because I love using, like I say, movies or my personal life, or giving examples of clients' lives, obviously confidentially, because I can't name them. A great example of this is the movie Legends of the Fall. This is an old movie. Anthony Hopkins, Brad Pitt's in it. There's a couple of other actors in it whose name I've completely forgotten. It's an old movie. It's been around years, but it's often repeated actually on television or on satellite. It's a lovely movie. There's many movies I love, but that's one of them I do have always liked as well. And that's a great example of where there is a woman that meets one of three brothers in the family. Anthony Hopkins is the dad. And the first brother she meets is definitely not a soul connection. He's absolutely lovely. And there's an innocence and a purity between the two of them. And it's beautiful. And if you haven't seen the movie, there's a spoiler alert coming up, so you might want to mute the video for a minute, or if you don't mind it being ruined, that's fine. She meets the other brothers this is before she gets married to him. I think he's Samuel, the youngest brother she's going to marry. She meets the other two brothers. One of the brothers is Brad Pitt, and forgive me, I can't remember the other actor's name. He's a lovely actor. He's been around years as well. And she likes the other two brothers. Brad Pitt, there's something of a pull towards Brad Pitt because Brad Pitt is a soul connection, unbeknown to her at that moment, or unbeknown to him. There's a pull. There's a soul connection there, which she doesn't have with the one she's going to marry, Samuel, or the other brother. To cut a long story short, I think it's World War I kicks in, and the brothers all decide it's their patriotic duty to pile in and go to the war. So the marriage doesn't go ahead, and I believe the lady, whose name I forget, the character she's playing now, you would have thought, having seen the movie so many times, I think it might be Susanna, but I might have got that wrong. She's all upset about them going to war, and her and Brad Pitt have just a moment where they gaze into each other's eyes, and I think they're just about to kiss, or they do have a kiss or something. And the other brother, who's not marrying her, walks in and sees it, so that again there's immediate tension, because he thinks, oh, how can you do this to the younger brother? All three go off to war. The one she was going to marry is killed, which leaves two brothers. The one that she can't get out of her system and that she has this real pull towards is the soul connection, the magnetics of the soul. So Brad Pitt, who unfortunately is the wildest, most unpredictable one of all of them, and is not somebody that can be pinned down, is more Native American Indian than anything, and he has a wildness in him, like I say, a rawness in him, which she both loves, but is extremely difficult. And when the two brothers, the surviving brothers, come back, she has a bit of a fling with Brad Pitt while she's still living in Anthony Hopkins' house. Brad Pitt is not the sort of personality that you can pin down, like I say, and he decides he must just go off into the wilderness, leaving her in a real state, because she wants to be with him. She's fallen in love with him. They've been intimate by now, which leaves only one brother remotely on the scene now. And this brother has fallen in love with her. There is absolutely no connection between her and this brother. But basically, Brad Pitt spends years before he comes back. He buggers off and does all wild, crazy things. And she is waiting and waiting, and the other brother swoops in and scoops her up, really, and offers her a life and says, you just can't sit here rotting away, really. I mean, he doesn't literally say that, marry me because you're going to rot away. But that's, you know, he's in love with her and he's offering her an opportunity to have a life. Big spoiler alert here. Towards the end of the movie, of course, Brad Pitt comes back again, marries someone else, a Native American Indian girl. And when he's back on the scene, there's absolute heartbreak for the woman that was going to marry his brother, who's now married his other brother, because the pull and the love for him has never gone away. So with Brad Pitt back on the scene, it brings all that up again. And basically, she kills herself over it. She kills herself because she can't be with him. She can't have children of her own. She can't seem to get beyond it, and she's not really in love with the brother that she's with, that she settled for. And Brad Pitt goes through a lot of tragedy of his own. He loses his wife, and he basically, I think, has to go on the run, you know, because he fights back the authorities, that wildness in him, you know, defending his family, and he's off. So I only use this as an example because it's a classic example there of three brothers. One, she would have been happy with that first one had he survived and not gone off to World War One. She would have been happy with him. There was an innocence and purity, and I feel that would have been enough. Even having briefly met Brad Pitt, they wouldn't have had that moment together had they not all been going off to the war anyway. That would have kept under the surface. But of course, that all changed with the advent of World War One and that stolen kiss between them. And the other brother, she would never have been happy with him. The one she ended up marrying, who had quite a lot of money and power and influence in the end, she was never happy with him. That was a question of going through the motions and trying to make the best of things. Having said that, you could say to me, would she have ever have been happy with the soul connection, Brad Pitt? No, really not. The happiest one she would have been with, the most happy she would have been with, was the original brother, the gentle, innocent connection, because there was no polarization or triggering there. There was no settling for just anyone with the second brother there. And with Brad Pitt, that was dramatic and passionate and amazing, but very polarized. And he was not a stable enough character to give her what she wanted. In other words, she would have been going through endless suffering, which she basically did from the moment she met him, and ends up, you know, culminating with the death, you know, the loss of her own life. So I know that's just, you know, fiction and just a movie, but it beautifully illustrates what genuine soul connections are like. I'm not just basing it on a movie and a fairy tale. Energetically, what a lot of soul connections are like. If you are in a what you would refer to as a soulmate connection, that is a genuine soulmate connection and not just your word for it, and it's long-term and harmonized, that's because you were already at a point in your own being where connecting with them was going to be harmonized anyway, or in other words, it was resolved or sorted out or balanced out in other timelines. Or who you refer to as a soulmate is not a soulmate. They're just somebody wonderful that is wonderful for you. Just like I would never refer to my ex-husband as a soulmate. Yet, so far in my life, the longest relationship I'd ever had with anyone, the most stable, the happiest, the most balanced, and brought my two beautiful sons into the world. But I still wouldn't refer to him as a soulmate any more than he'd refer to me as a soulmate. But it is what it is, and it is and was what it is. So on that note, I hope you found that interesting, and I hope it kind of clarifies again the old relationship paradigm word for soulmate. That is a paradigm that's changing, and I suspect in the not too distant future we won't be using the terminology soulmate anymore. Because as people go up through the rungs of ascension into their heart, it's going to be a part of their process that as time goes on and it evolves in people and on this planet, that process, that part of it is kind of redundant. A lot of people now, especially in their 30s, that's the most popular age range for people activating pretty much fully conscious, well, at the top end of the range, without having to go through soulmate connections to get the soul less polarized and come into a 0 point quantum field of energy. They're not having to do that. They're activating, you know, already coming online to who they are, without having to learn it through very long, slow, laborious, polarized, painful ways of connection with people, which, you know, lucky them, you know. they'll learn it in a different way. They'll be expanding their consciousness and co-creators of their reality. You know, it will be very different for them. Not any less interesting, I'm absolutely sure, but it'll just be very different for them. Part of that is their own point of their evolution, but part of it is because they've imprinted on the work, shall we say, in consciousness, on the templates of consciousness that are out there, that, well, I'm going to say it, you know, people like myself have been part of sorting out, not just me, thousands of other people. To enable the next lot of people to be able to imprint that and not have to go the long, slow, laborious way round. Anyway, on that note, I'll love you and leave you because I don't want this to go on too long. As always, thanks for watching the channel, thanks for subscribing to the channel, and thank you for supporting me as that channel in all the ways that you do. Look after yourselves. I'll be back on camera soon, I'm sure, as always. Thank you. Loads of love. Bye. Bye.